G'day, welcome to Godless Australian. How you doing? Today I want to have a quick chat about something that is happening in Australia. And for those of you who aren't Australian, which I'm assuming would be most of you, this is probably going to be a bit of an interesting exploration into the laws of Australia at the moment. And the law I'm talking about is Folau's law. So a little bit of a background. Israel Folau is an Australian football player, rugby player. He has played for Australia in the World Cup, which is not a soccer thing. Yes, I said soccer. Ooh! Okay, there's 3 codes already of football in Australia. We don't want another one. So what's going on is that Israel Folau is a rugby football player, and that's pretty big in Australia. He's gone to the highest of the highest. He's even played for Australia in the World Cup. He's definitely the best of the best. He's also a very, very, very strong Christian person, which is fine. You can be Christian. I've got nothing against you on that. However, I do have an issue with the tweets that you've been putting out. And basically, for those of you who are currently driving along and reading and listening to what I'm saying, basically he's just said things like homosexuals should all go to hell if they don't repent or something like that. I haven't got my phone. This is just off the cuff, so I can't tell you exactly what he says, but that's basically the gist of it, that all homosexuals are disgusting, ugly people who deserve to go to hell unless they repent. So, of course, Rugby Australia went, we don't like that. So what they did is they gave him some disciplinary action and made him go through a course, because what happened is that it wasn't in his contract to say you can't say shitty things about people on social media, which is great. I mean, you'd think that saying shitty things about people on social media is a fairly common sense thing. However, apparently common sense does not exist for some people. So what they also did was they wrote up a new contract for him as well, saying do not say shitty things about people on social media. A few months later, he went and said basically the same thing on social media, and said if gay people don't repent and take God into their lives, they'll all go to hell. So, of course, that was a breach of his contract, and his contract got torn up. He is now taking Rugby Australia to the High Court to try and get reinstated. So what's happening is that now we have a Conservative government led by Scott Morrison. If those of you who haven't watched my video on Scott Morrison and Bill Shorten and their religious affiliations that I released before the election, then you can go and check it out. Links in the description below, because I don't actually trust YouTube's cards, but I will try my best to put the card on as well if you wanted to link that. Scott Morrison is basically a fundamentalist religious person. He is a part of the Horizon Church, which is kind of like Hillsong, a bit of the Happy Clappers, Slade in the Spirit kind of people, and I'm slightly concerned that he is our PM, because I'm really, really worried about religious influence in our government. So when Israel Folau decided to retweet, he was able to get some support from the conservative religious people in our government in regards to bringing this to the High Court. They're probably looking at weakening Section 18C of our Constitution. Basically, 18C of our Constitution is basically don't be a dick in regards to free speech. Anything you say in regards to certain groups of people, it was initially based on racism, but it can also be translated into other minority groups as well. So basically, you can't go on Twitter or Instagram or something like that and say all homosexuals deserve to burn in hell, because that actually sort of goes against the don't be a dick part of our Constitution. Mainly it relates to really powerful people such as Israel Folau. I mean, I'm a literal nobody, so I probably could go on social media and say all homosexuals deserve to burn in hell. Obviously, I wouldn't do that because I'm not a dick. But someone like our Prime Minister cannot say all homosexuals deserve to burn in hell, because he's our Prime Minister. That's part of Section 18C. It's an anti-discrimination law. People have been trying to weaken 18C for quite some time. Thankfully, it's kind of stood the test of time. However, I'm slightly concerned about the strength of 18C at the moment because of our Conservative government. But the thing is, there's this sort of argument of religious freedom and not being a dick, basically. And I'm all for religious freedom. I know that sounds weird considering I'm running an atheist channel, but I am actually really all for religious freedom. I think religious freedom is very important to people. I also include that as freedom from religion. I believe at the moment religious institutions have way too much input into our political system. It is actually kind of concerning for me in regards to that. For example, churches are still not being taxed. 30% or just below 30% of Australians identify as none. That's the largest group of religious people in Australia. It's a bit concerning for me that 30% of the Australian population is having their laws being influenced by religious institutions. So going back to Israel Folau. So the argument that Israel Folau is saying is that his religious freedoms should be upheld because he wanted to be able to express his religious views. My argument against that is you have every right to say all gay people deserve to go to hell, but you also have every right to accept the consequences of what was going on. He breached his contract to Rugby Australia by saying that. I believe he should not be allowed to say that his religious freedoms are being impinged, because they're not. No one has told him he can't say these things. He is more than welcome to say them. But with rights comes responsibilities. If he wanted to say these things, and he has to be prepared to accept the consequences of his actions. Let's look at my position. In my job, I work with people with disabilities. I talk about it a couple of times on Twitter. If I go online and start saying awful things about people with disabilities, that'd be a breach of my contract and I could get fired. I mean, I wouldn't say awful things about people with disabilities because people with disabilities are the most lovely people I've met. But I can't say all people with disabilities deserve to rot in hell, because if I did, I could lose my job. I don't say that all people with disabilities deserve to rot in hell, because that's completely incorrect. So Israel Folau breached his contract. Just the same as if you breach your contract and you've had a warning and yet you breach it again, you can be fired. It is not an uncommon thing. This does not come under religious freedom. This comes under workplace law. You breach your contract, you deserve to be fired. Israel Folau, I'm sorry. You don't deserve to be able to take this to the High Court. I don't give a crap about your religious freedom. If you were a nobody saying these things on Twitter, then you wouldn't be fired. This is not a religious freedom thing. This is a workplace thing. Rugby Australia does not want to be seen as a group of people who support bigoted, homophobic people. Again, you put yourself in this situation. I'm sorry, but you did. So what does this mean in regards to Australia? Hopefully the High Court will be able to say that Rugby Australia has not broken any laws, because they haven't. And I'm also hoping that this doesn't go in his favour, because weakening of Section 18C of the Constitution is likely to open up a lot more vitriol towards minority groups. And I think it's a bit of a sweet irony that if he, as the person pushing through laws to weaken 18C, because he is actually a part of a minority group, people are now going to be able to say, without any repercussions, awful things about him. I hope 18C does stay strong, because there is too much disgusting content out there against not just LGBTQIA plus people, not just against Islamic people, not just against minorities, but just people in general. We need, as a species, to shut up. We need to start looking and being empathetic and loving towards people we don't understand. We need to look at people and not look at them and see the colour of their skin or their religion or their sexual orientation. We need to look at people and see people, because no one does that very much anymore. We need to stop being assholes. Just stop it. Look at people and empathize and sympathize, and just for half a second, think, what would it be like to be that person? I beg you, internet, do it. Anyway, this is my thoughts on the Israel Folau situation. I am in total support of Rugby Australia for getting rid of his contract. He deserves to lose his job. Just in the same way, if I breach my contract, I deserve to lose my job too. It's nothing special. Anyway, don't forget, don't give yourself the raw prawn.